Good evening, Council. Now call the Tuesday, April 27th, 2021 meeting to order. First item on the agenda under 2.1 is adoption of this evening's agenda. Councillor G, Councillor Pearson, any additions or deletions? Hearing none, all in favor? It's carried. Item 3.1, adoption of the minutes of the previous regular meeting being April 13th, 2021. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, any errors or omissions arising? Hearing none, all in favor? It's carried. Under 4.1, Council, we do have a delegation coming to us tonight from KPMG. They're going to be presenting on the audited financial statements for the 2020 year end. I'm pleased to welcome Ms. Michaela Roque.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here.
Good evening. Nice to have you.
So I'm Michaela Roque. I'm an audit partner in our Prince George KPMG office. I've been a partner I've been at KPMG for 15 years, and I might be new to you guys this year, but I have worked on the audit as a junior accountant, a staff accountant, so I've been on the ground doing the audit, and now very privileged to help Corey Naftali, our office managing partner, to continue on and partner your audit as well. And I want to say a big thank you to management and to the village for all the transparency throughout the audit and for helping us complete the audit virtually in these times right now that we have to keep everyone safe. Really appreciate you helping our teams to stay safe and completing the audit virtually. So a big thank you to Lori and her team. So I'm going to present to you guys the audited statements for December 31, 2020. So I'll just share my screen here if that is all right with everyone there.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. So I'm just going to go through the auditor's report. As well, I'm going to go through the details of the financial statements and then discuss the surplus and reserves. And then I have just a slide for any questions at the end there. So for the auditor's report, KPMG is going to be providing a clean audit opinion again this year on the Village of Belmont consolidated financial statements for December 31, 2020, in accordance with the public sector, Canadian public sector accounting standards. So I'll delve right into the financials. I've just presented here at a high level, but the financial statements are available in detail from the office if anybody needs to see the details. So I'm going to start off today with the financial assets. So this is assets that can be converted into cash and is accessible to the village fairly quickly in terms of receiving an asset. So cash and cash equivalents this year, 10.1 million compared to 7.9 million in the previous year. So there was a significant increase this year in cash, and this is mainly due, and we'll talk a little bit about this, due to the surplus within the year that we'll see in the statement of operations. Accounts receivable, 1.5 million this year versus 843,000 in the previous year. So accounts receivable here has increased by about 600,000 this year, and this is just timing of when funding is receivable. So this balance comprises of taxes receivable, grants receivable, sales taxes. Included in the AR this year is a BC Hydro Trans Mountain pipeline upgrade project funds for 580,000 this year is included in there, which is why you might see a bit of an increase this year. Inventories for the village is 12,000, and this year the investment in your what we call GBEs or GBPs, government business enterprises. So this is the community forest income that you've recorded here in terms of investment. This year is at 8.1 compared to 6.6 million in the previous year. So total financial assets for the village is 19.8 million compared to 15.4 million in the previous year. So on the flip side of the financial assets is the financial liabilities. So this is the amounts that the village owed at December 31. Accounts payable and accrued liabilities, 786,000 compared to 496 in the previous year. And this balance is comprised of vendors that needed to be paid, your bills, and any accruals for payroll that needed to be paid and was owed at December. Development cost charges, 368,000 compared to 365. Deferred revenue, 1 million, just over 1 million compared to 575,000 in the previous year. So deferred revenue, this is included in your cash. This is funds that are waiting to be spent on specific projects. So included in that million this year is about 250,000 increase in the CBT funding. So that makes up a big portion of the deferred revenue, and there's more details inside the detailed financial statements as well. Refundable deposits of 21,000 this year, and then with the long-term debt from the water fund of 558,000 compared to 616,000, so repayments of about almost 60,000 this year. Brings your total financial liabilities to 2.7 million compared to almost 2.3 in the previous year. So maybe before we move on to non-financial assets, so I like to let council know that to look at the total financial assets of 19.8 million compared to your total financial liabilities of 2.7 million. So it's a healthy net financial assets that has been generated by the village. So that means that all your liabilities could be covered by your financial assets, which is a kind of a nice indicator for to look at to make sure that all your liabilities could be covered if anything happened. So then we move to the non-financial assets. So this is the tangible buildings and things that you can touch, like the equipment and computers. And so here, and prepaid expenses, so funds that have already been expended, 36,000, very in line with the previous year. Tangible capital assets makes up a very significant balance on your financial statements. So almost 14.2 million in non-financial assets compared to 13.4 in the previous year. And so this year there was about additions of 1.3 million. And then also included in here is every year accountants will record what we call amortization or depreciation. You'll hear this phrase being mentioned, and we kind of estimate an aging expense for your assets, so that your assets don't stay on the books always at what you purchased it for. As it gets used and expended, and the wear and tear on your assets, we like to record an expense to draw down that asset as well. So the 1.3 million took it up in terms of additions, and then there was about 570,000 of depreciation to get you to the almost 14.2 million this year, so of tangible capital assets. So then for the operations for the year, so revenue was budgeted for 6.1, and actuals came in at 8.5 million for revenue compared to 7.3 in the previous year. And we'll go through a little bit of a breakdown on what makes up this balance here on the next slide. Expenses were budgeted to be just over 4 million. The village came in at 3.8, in line with the previous year of also 3.8. So this year there was an annual surplus budgeted to be just over 2 million. The village generated a $4.6 million surplus compared to 3.5 million in the previous year. So here I'll just go through what makes up the revenue. So there's your net taxation revenue of just over $1 million. It was in line with what was budgeted for, slightly a little bit higher than the previous year. Sales and user fees budgeted to be $977,000, and it came in at the 1.4 million compared to 998 in the previous year, and that's due to the increase in the sales and user fees, up by about 8.5%. Licenses and permits, 72,000 this year. Hotel and resort tax came in at 380,000 compared to 448 in the previous year. You have some rentals there for 59,000 this year. Government transfers, well, these are grants that are received provincially. This line covers the provincial grants, 2.2 million compared to 4.1 in the previous year. Federal grants, 98,000 compared to 200,000 in the previous year. And then this year, the village did receive the Safe Restart grant of about 500,000. And then there's some Trans Mountain pipeline funding of about 1.2 that were received as well. So included in this 1.4 million of other transfers, government transfers. Investments and penalties came in at 117,000, very similar to the previous year. And then this year, your investment in your community forest entities generated 1.5 million compared to 121,000 in the previous year. And then with the visitor center, that brings you to your total revenue of 8.5 million generated in the year, compared to the budget of 6.1. And then these are the expenses. So this is by function, so by different department here. I won't go through and read necessarily all of them, but some of your larger departments are your general government, 1.3 in line with what was budgeted. Transportation services, which was budgeted to be 499,000, came in at 383, just above a prior year of 347. Another significant department is recreation and community development, budgeted to be 846,000, and incurred 819,000 of expenses compared to 890 in the previous year. And then water utility, 497,000 compared to a budget of 538. Sewer was budgeted to be 468,000, and expenditures of 490,000 were incurred. With the visitor center of 77,000, total expenditures this year were at 3.8 million. So this chart here just shows the 4.6 million in annual surplus that was generated for the 2020 fiscal year. Added to your prior year accumulated surplus, generates accumulated surplus for the year of 31,264,000. So I just want to mention this number here because I know a lot of members and citizens and council and board members look at this number and they feel that this is all surplus, and it is since inception, but it's not made up of surplus that can just be expended. This also includes, and I'll go into this on this next slide here, it includes about 13 million of your investment that you've made in tangible capital assets. So a lot of your funds have been spent to buy capital, and so that investment is already spent and tied up, and it's all tied into your assets. So part of that is assets. There is a portion that is general fund unrestricted, which is 3.5 million. As well, there's restricted funds that are needed to be used for specific purposes, 8.1 million. And then water is sitting at 881,000 in terms of a surplus. And sewer at 541,000. So of that 31 million, 26 million is tied up into these different buckets that we mentioned here. And then the other piece that makes up the difference are these reserve funds that are set aside for specific purposes. So there's about 4.4 million of reserves set aside for specific purposes that had been approved by council. So capital works and machinery, 391,000. There's land sales of 68,000 set aside. MFA unexpected funds for water and for sewer here each have their own allocated reserve fund. And then as well, what makes up a large portion of that 4.4 million is your Northern Capital Planning grant of 3.7 million this year compared to 2.9 million in the previous year. So 4.4 million in the reserves set aside to spend for future projects, making up your surplus of the 31 million. So then in the notes to the financial statements, there's details for all of the different areas that I had gone through here today. This year, new is the Schedule 1 and Schedule 2, so the Northern Capital Planning Grant Schedule and the Safe Restart Grant Schedule. So these are required by the funders to add an extra schedule to be able to explain where the funds were spent. So you'll see that attached to the consolidated financial statements. So those are your summary for your financial statements for the December 31, 2020 fiscal. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Ms. Roque. Motion please to receive the delegation. Councillor G, Councillor Blanchette. Questions for the auditor? Comments? Councillor Blanchette.
Just a thank you to our staff and specifically our Director of Finance, Lori McNee, for another clean report. It's, every year we have a fabulous report, so thank you to Lori, and thank you for doing our audit.
Further questions for the auditor? Well, thank you very much, Ms. Roque, for the presentation. It's always nice to hear from our partners at KPMG, and I do echo Councillor Blanchette. Mrs. McNee and her team, year after year, working with your firm, providing a very clean audit and showing fiscal responsibility. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me again. Take care.
Thanks.
Stay safe. All in favor of receipt? It's carried. We do have a request for action or correspondence for action. There's 6.1 from the Royal Canadian Legion. They are requesting that staff be directed to work with members of the Royal Canadian Legion to place banners of remembrance on the lampposts on 5th Avenue. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor G, any discussion? Councillor Blanchette.
I think this is a great initiative. Mr. Addis seems to have been spearheading this, and I really look forward to this. I think it's going to be fabulous.
It really highlights the importance of remembrance.
Yeah, it does.
And achievements similar to our graduation grads.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was just an awesome program. Mm-hmm. And further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Anything out of the reading file folks would like to highlight? Councillor Blanchette?
We did put our names forward for the suicide prevention hotline, correct? Okay, just wanted to verify that.
We'll have some feedback from the federal minister at next meeting.
Okay.
Just didn't make it back here in time.
Okay.
Anything else for council in the reading file? Under number 7, council will note the CN right-of-way vegetation control, and within that was an offer that if the village was looking for any sort of chemical controls outside of the right-of-way, that they would be pleased to be working with staff. Under 8.1, accounts payable, March 2021, that the report be received. Councillor Pearson, Councillor G, anything in there that is of interest for council to highlight? Discussion? All in favor? Carries. 8.2, January through March 2021 bylaw enforcement summary report, that the report be received. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson. Discussion? Councillor Pearson.
It was a really well put together report, and I was happy to see the results of the survey and what was reflected in there. So,
Thank you. Councillor Blanchette.
I'm glad to see that the open air burning has gone down.
Significantly.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm quite thrilled about that.
Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor of receipt? It's carried. 8.3, we have a couple recommendations under the airport lighting repairs. One, that council approves. Contribution of $66,500 towards the airport lighting repairs. $37,000 from the COVID-19 airport relief, and $29,500 from the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant. Councillor G, Councillor Blanchette, discussion. All in favor? It's carried. And 2, that council approves sole sourcing the airport lighting repairs to Signal Electric Limited. Councillor G, Councillor Pearson, discussion. Something we do not take lightly when it comes down to sole sourcing.
quick question: is this this would be the same company then? I'm guessing that's services McBride. I'm just hoping that we can piggyback trips versus them traveling up McBride and come back a month later and do us kind of thing. So I would hope.
I don't have an answer for you,
Yeah.
but Mr. Administrator?
I don't know if it's necessarily the same company as McBride. My guess is it probably is, because I understand that they're actually one of the only companies that can service airfields for electrical work. However, the reason why we're bringing this to you today is because they are passing through. So that's why we're coming to you right now, saying we can get it all done now, so we don't have to worry about extra mobilizing costs that wouldn't be necessary otherwise, or would be necessary otherwise.
Thank you.
Incredibly nimble. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Further discussion? All in favor of sole sourcing? It's carried. 8.4, municipal sewer line cleaning request for quotes. Recommendation here that staff be directed to negotiate a 3-year contract with an option to renew for a further 2 with Northern Lights Technology 2021 Limited for the purpose of providing municipal sewer cleaning. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor G, any discussion? Council's okay with locking in 3? They've been, I don't know how Northern Lights has been in this community, but a long time. They've been looking after our infrastructure for some time now. Further discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Under 8.5, we do have an opportunity to apply for an NDIT Community Places grant application. A couple of recommendations here. Number 1, the council directs staff to apply for $30,000 to Northern Development Initiative Trust through the Community Places program. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, discussion. All in favor? It's carried. And 2, that council provide a resolution of support for the NDIT Community Places Program application. Councillor G, Councillor Blanchette, discussion. I always like the partnerships that we can create through NDIT. All in favor? Carries. 8.6, Local Government Development Approvals Program. There is a recommendation that staff be directed to apply to the UBCM, Local Government Development Approvals Program. Councillor Pearson, Councillor G, discussion. Questions for administration?
It's a good opportunity.
Yeah, certainly. All in favor? It's carried. 8.7, Bylaw Enforcement Services full-time position. There is a recommendation that council direct administration to hire a full-time bylaw enforcement officer and to allocate sufficient funds from the COVID restart funds to fund this position for the remainder of 2021. Councillor Pearson, Councillor G, discussion? All in favor? Carries. We have some land disposition to consider under 8.8 at 1451 Fifth Avenue. There is a recommendation that council authorize the CAO to sign a lease agreement between the Provincial Rental Housing Corporation, BC Housing, and the Village of Valemount for the village-owned land at 1451 Fifth Avenue for the below market value of $10 for a term of 60 years. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Pearson, discussion? Gets things moving. All in favor? It's carried. Under bylaws and policies, 9.1, Village of Belmont 5-year financial bylaw number 841, 2021. Recommendation here that it be given third reading as presented. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Blanchette, discussion on third. All in favor? Carried. 9.2, Village of Valemount Official Community Plan Bylaw Number 843, 2021. Recommendation here that the Official Community Plan Bylaw Number 843, 2021 be given second reading as amended. Councillor G. Councillor Pearson. Discussion. Some housekeeping in there. Some mapping updates.
It's looking good.
Some roadway updates, or future roadway updates. All in favor? Carried. 9.3, Village of Valemount Tax Rate Bylaw Number 845, 2021. Recommendation here that it be given first, second, and third reading. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor G. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Any notice of motions this evening? Council reports. Councillor Pearson, what have you been up to?
April 20th, we had a tourism governance strategy session with Stormy Lake Consulting, looking towards putting together basically a new 5-year plan for tourism and options for the governance model for tourism. Really good session. They run a really a good forum with breakout groups and stuff that keeps it interesting and keeps you engaged with the whole process. So that was followed that afternoon by our regular tourism meeting. April 22nd, I joined the lineup of citizens for our vaccination. Quick, painless, and really super well organized. I mean, I was really impressed, and the conversations I heard, I mean, the numbers were really good for a local response, so gets us well on the way. Friday, April 23rd, meeting of the Transcanada Yellowhead Highway Association, talking about how to continue our advocacy and promotion of the Yellowhead route, Highway 16 from Haida Gwaii to the Manitoba border on the east, and Highway 5 from Tijon to Kamloops. Yesterday afternoon, a tour of the Belmont Community Forest Industrial Park. Very enlightening. You can drive by that every day and not know what's going on out there, and to do a walkthrough of the site and all the tenants of the property. It was a really good tour. And this morning sat in on the broadband CanX update on broadband connectivity in basically the regional district, Fraser Fort George, including Mackenzie, McBride in here. And that's mine.
Thank you so much. Councillor G.
It seems like forever since I was here, since I missed the last meeting. Lots has happened, but most of it unrelated. March 1st, I had the last CBT adjudication meeting, which the results from that were brought to the last council meeting. April 21st, I also got in line for the Moderna vaccine. Very quick and painless and no side effects. And March 26th, we'd had our final wrap-up meeting of the CBT adjudication committee, just with discussions on the process, how it went, what we could improve for next year. So that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Blanchette.
On the 15th, we had a housing meeting, and I did have a report that I had written up from our notes from the meeting, and I forgot it at home, so my apologies. I'd like to bring it forward next meeting. But I'm just going to throw out there that the median income in Belmont is $51,000. So when we're dealing with housing, that number doesn't really jive with, building a house or acquiring a house. So we do have some stumbling roadblocks ahead of us. So just chew on that until my next meeting, and I'll read out my report, because there were some really good things brought up. We had a guest speaker who really enlightened us quite a bit. On the 19th, we had a health collaborative patient health record meeting. We're moving along on that quite well with the working group. On the 20th, I had my jab as well, and kudos to everybody that was involved in the setup, because it was just a wonderful experience. It wasn't scary. It was well run, very efficient. Everybody was just fabulous through the whole process. So thank you for everybody involved in that. On the 20th as well, I was part of the tourism strategy workshop. Really a good group of people trying to do a really hard job, so that was really interesting. The 26th, I had another working group meeting with the Health Collaborative. The 26th, we also had another meeting with our elder care group. We're trying to figure out how to do a senior fall fair. We're still figuring it out, so we're not sure what's going to happen with that. But we do have UBCM grant money sitting there, so we're trying to figure out maybe what we need to do is send out some grab bags to our seniors with some things that could be useful. So we're throwing around a few ideas. And then today, as part of the Health Collaborative Working Group, I was the first, we did a trial run on the patient record interviews. So I was the first guinea pig. And so we're trying to involve the community in this process. More will come at a later date, but just to throw it out there that it has begun, and I was the first one. And it's very, very informative. And all the information that we give on these one-on-ones will help move us forward to getting our own patient records. Hopefully a two-way one would be lovely. And I'd like to thank our DOF again for our clean report. Ever since I've ever sat in this chair, we've always had a clean report, and she just does a fabulous job. So really, really thank you very much, Mrs. McNee, because that's wonderful. And that is it.
That's it, eh?
That's all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
On April 14th, a Canbasket debris management joint committee, so members of the town of Golden and the village of Valemount. April 16th, had a connectivity discussion with area reps from Columbia, Shuswap, Central Kootenay, and East Kootenay regional districts. Later that day, had a CBT investments committee meeting. On the 19th, had a collaborative Southeast BC connectivity committee. We had a presenter that gave a great presentation on infrastructure management, ownership, and service delivery. So a couple of different ways we can approach improving connectivity, whether it's owning the asset, not owning the asset, running the operation, farming it out, and the various costs that might be associated with it. April 19th, I had a COVID briefing, I I watched the COVID briefing with Dr. Bonner Henry. Of course, we had an extension of the March 29 orders, which takes us through the May long weekend. On April 19th, April 19th, had a Varda board meeting. On April 20th, had a briefing with Valemount Emergency Services, highlighting there, along with the community vaccination program, much help from the BC Emergency Health Services, so Unit Chief Derek McClure's team helping out with the community vaccinations. On April 21st, had a Regional District Agricultural Land Use Committee and a 5-hour agricultural forum. So we had presenters from everywhere from Millworth all the way to here, presenting on different ways that they're farming and how they're supporting the agricultural land base. Just really cool. We had everything from grand success to if we don't open our eyes, we're all going to die kind of presentations, soil deprivation, things like that. So it was an eye-opener. And to that, I was nominated and acclaimed chair. So looking forward to the next year for that. That lunch hour received my dose of COVID-19 vaccination. There was a bit of a fallout there. Hilariously, my beard fell off. Not from the COVID vaccination, but from behavioral following that. April 22nd, had a Regional District Environmental Parks Committee meeting. All through that day, Regional District Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee meeting, Regional District Agricultural Land Use continuance, Regional Hospital Board, and then regular board of the Regional District Fraser Fort George. April 23rd, that last Friday, we did have the announcement from the Ministry of Public Safety regarding travel restrictions, which kind of sent the entire province into what? So some highlights there. I'm sure you all know the 5 health regions have been amalgamated into 3 for the purposes of these travel restrictions, and we are being asked to please stick close to home. More on that. April 24th, so the Saturday, had an association with Kootenay Boundary Local Governments virtual AGM, and from there was some great resolutions sent forward to UBCM, but there was talks of an October 1, 2, and 3 in-person convention to be held in Radium, and during the Zoom, a lot of the local government officials were, Dr. Bonner Henry, she's got to okay this. It's everything's got to go through, Dr. Henry. And I hats off to the mayor of Radium, Claire Reinhardt, who said we shouldn't be placing this on Dr. Bonner Henry. We should be placing it on ourselves. And so if we want to have a future that involves meeting people in groups or going to concerts and events, we got to stay the course, stay close to home with our households and bubbles, things of that nature. Now's not the time to travel. April 26th, had our Zoom meeting with the RMI mayors to kind of follow up from the travel restriction announcement. And collaboratively, it is, from a resort municipality standpoint, we are all in agreement. This is not the time to visit a resort municipality outside of your region, outside of your home. Stay close to home, enjoy what you have, support local, and hopefully we'll have better news for you come following the May long weekend. Joined Councillor Pearson and Councillor Donnie MacLean on April 26th for a tour of the Valemount Industrial Park. It was an eye-opener for myself, particularly the sort yard. I had an inkling of what the sort yard was about, but the amount of marketing and branding and brokering that goes through that sort yard is pretty phenomenal. And of course, we had staff represented from Mr. Robinson and Mr. Gislamberti. And of course, the new mill, just outstanding. It should be, we didn't have a concrete date of up and running, but quickly. It's,
This year?
yes, yeah, definitely this year. On Zoom today with Tanix for their presentation on the regional connectivity gap analysis. 63 million, I think, to get the more densely populated areas of the regional district connected fiber to the home. So I think that'll go back to the regional board and for serious discussion. But just to note, I mean, connectivity is lower than what the federal government really thinks in every area of the regional district. It's not just here or just outside of here, it's Mackenzie right to Hickson. Had a briefing with Valemount Emergency Services again today with Sergeant Dean. Good to know that there was an area-wide road check kind of program put out over the weekend. Nothing to do with the travel restrictions, generally just looking for driving under the influence and things of that nature, so not COVID related. And then a briefing this afternoon with Minister Farnworth, who's the Minister of Public Safety, who enacted that travel restrictions. There was a lot of Mr. Robinson, 140 communities on the line.
Approximately.
So was able to take questions. There wasn't a whole lot of new updates, just some sort of clarity around what that looks like. The road checks that everyone's kind of have on their mind is not sort of rural based, so not a whole lot of resources having to be diverted by our local detachment to put up these road checks, but mainly in that the junction of Highway 5, 1 and 3 near Hope. That's kind of where a lot of that will be focused on. And that's my report.
That's it.
That's her. Motion to receive, Councillor Pearson, Councillor G. Questions, comments? Councillor Pearson?
Actually, just to touch on a couple things regarding our industrial park tour, the diversity of tenants in there was quite amazing, and to see what's happening there. So I mean, it was very positive, and it was nice. I didn't record the numbers, but part of the handout was basically how many jobs are involved with each tenant in the industrial park. So yeah, so there was definitely some good points on that. And on the broadband front too, I mean, it's so frustrating to see the numbers of what are recorded as connectivity versus what the ISED federal arm sees, and I'm hoping that there's a way to convince them that what the actual numbers are, because as long as they think 5010 is already in the communities, they're not spending any money on it. So
I thought they were going to be sending that to the province, though. Wasn't it the province was going to get that information and then hopefully open their eyes?
well, I think it's more a federal issue to get it. I mean, this is a big federal spend, but in their minds, we already have it. So that's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Blanchette?
I was going to ask you how many locals were on that agricultural call that you said, their businesses.
Well, I'd say local to Area H. So out of the 8 presenters, there was 3.
Oh, okay, good, that's good.
Beekeeping, sheep farming. There's one more, not off the top of my head.
Well, 3's good. Okay. Yeah, perfect.
Further discussion? I had it here somewhere. So what does the future of the Transcanada, Yellowhead, and their ability to lobby the 4 provinces look like during COVID?
There's a fairly good relationship. It's mostly, the biggest thing right now is driving membership within the communities along the route. A lot of councils have chosen not to continue their membership and stuff, so there's a bit of a struggle that way, and how to get the word out of what exactly the association does. But yeah, and that's where it's important for those member communities, and currently we have 3 BC reps, which is myself, Sandy Salt, and Rosemary Ruby are the 3 BC. Yeah, trying to get participation from the west, because it does extend all the way to Haida Gwaii, so that's a challenge. But you know, for those communities that have issues that are highway related, to put a motion forward through council, and that can be forwarded to us to advocate on towards the province, and as we have done with a few separate issues. So yeah, it's we're looking at different partnerships as far as promotions and advertising. Indigenous tourism is a very happening issue out there. So Alberta Indigenous tourism is on board, and so we've had contact with them, and it's just letting people know what's along the highway, and right now look at what's out there and plan your trip for a later date. That's the biggest thing.
Thank you. And any further discussion? All in favor of receipt? Carries. Under 14.1, were there any public comments received on items considered by council as part of the approved agenda?
We have received no public comments.
Thank you. We are not proceeding in camera this evening, so I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Pearson. Thank you, council.